Welcome back. So now we know how to select records from our data where values in a certain column are equal to some value that we specify. But what if we want to do the opposite? What if we want to pull records where the value in that column is not equal to a certain value? Well, it turns out that in most cases it's really easy. It's pretty much just like what we did before. You just change the equal sign to an exclamation mark followed by an equal sign. That's the kind of the SQL syntax for not equal to. So let's use an example from a slightly different table than the one we were using previously. This time we're going to use the sales.salesperson table. But for now, let's just pick some records based on the sales quota equaling, say, $250,000. We'll start with an equals and then we'll change to a not equals just to kind of make the difference apparent. So we're going to select all records where sales quota equals $250,000. All right, easy peasy. We already know how to do this. We've got this. So now let's see all records where the sales quota does not equal to $250,000. 3. Okay, I could have sworn there were more records in there that didn't have a value of 250,000 than 3. Let's see what happens when we comment out that criteria and run the query again. What about these records where the value is null? Well, null is not equal to $250,000, so why didn't those records return? Well, that's because null is a very special, kind of odd type of value in databases. You'll also encounter it in some programming languages. And what null basically means is an unknown value. And that's why these records don't show up when you apply this inequality. Because since null is unknown, you can't say for sure that it's not equal to 250,000. It might be. We just don't know what it is. So you can't say sales quota not equal to $250,000 and expect null sales quotas to come back. So how actually do we deal with nulls? Well, what if we tried to say where sales quota equals null? Let's try that. That's weird. No records return. What about where sales quota is not equal to null? Nothing returns there either. So this is because, again, with null being kind of this special value in databases, in SQL, you can't handle it the same way as a literal value like a text string or a number. You actually have to use special syntax when you're applying criteria to null. And that basically means, in this case, using the word is instead of an equal sign when you want to select values where, or records where a value is null, and then is not in place of not equal to when you want to select records where a value is not null. So let's check that out. First of all, let's get all the records where the sales quota is null. And there we are. There's those 3 records that we weren't able to pull in when we tried to use equal null or not equal to null. And then conversely, if we type is not null, there are all the records except for the ones with a null sales quota. So a common pitfall when dealing with inequalities in your where statement is you want to pull all records where the value in some column is not equal to some value you specify, but in reality what you want is not just values where the known value in that column is not equal to the value you set, but you also want the nulls. But if you don't spell that out, SQL's just going to give you the non-null values that don't equal the value you specified. Because SQL can't be sure on its own that that null value isn't what you specified. Kind of confusing, I know. And right now, there seem to be an obvious way around this, but that's just because we haven't gotten into combining criteria. Ultimately, how we'll handle this is to say something along the lines of where sales quota is not equal to 250,000 or sales quota is null. And if you run that, now we're getting everything where either the sales quota is not equal to 250,000 or it's null. And in most cases, that's probably what you'd want to see. But you have to add that extra piece. Now, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here by throwing that or in, but that's kind of necessary to deal with this situation. So I thought it would be a pretty good way to segue into our next topic, which will be combining criteria with and or in your where statements. So that's coming up, and I'll see you then.